Let's spend a few minutes on foreign policy. Give me the Doug Cloud thumbnail sketch of American foreign policy.
Well, we're doing it on a credit card, number one. Let's recognize that fact. That is not a long-term sustainable position and leads to a country's impoverishment. That's number one. Number two, the current situation. We have two land wars, essentially, in both Iraq and Afghanistan. In regards to Afghanistan, I really think that anytime we go to a war, any theater of the war, we have to have a absolute objective, and ultimately, and actually initially, there should be a congressional declaration of war. In the current situation in Afghanistan, we have neither. We need to have a clear policy and a declaration of war, or we need to get out at some point in the reasonable future without unnecessarily abandoning allies in a precarious position and without allowing the military their say in how to properly consolidate what has been accomplished, because there has been some things that have been accomplished. However, from a broader view, we have to think ultimately about the strength of our economy and the strength of our freedom and the strength of our ideals being the ultimate strength of our country and our Western civilization. And that alone is really our best protection. Yes, we must have a strong military, especially to protect our borders and our ideals. But again, we can't live life. We can't fight a war on a credit card. It's crashed and burned every empire before us.
We're having a conversation with Doug Cloud, a Republican candidate for Congress, the 6th Congressional District in Washington State. This is the area in and around Tacoma. So what are the other issues that are playing large in Tacoma? When you go to the Tea Party rallies, what do people have on their signs? What are people concerned about in the Tacoma area?
Well, the people that attend the Tea Parties, I think, ultimately are concerned about those two issues. The fact that our economy has a lot of slack in it right now, and they believe, at least if they can't verbalize it, they believe it's the government's fault. And the exact whys of it, they all have their individual reasons, I suppose. Most of them point to specific economic impacts the government has had. For instance, a business owner will say, look, what else can they take out of me? How can I keep going? I have had to lay off 100 people from my construction company, or I've had to shut down this sawmill, or whatever it is. That's their complaint, and they have that individual pressure point that they complain about. But ultimately, the problem is the collapse of the credit bubble, which is caused by the federal government. They know that.
Well, that's progress if people know it now, because they seem to have been oblivious while the bubbles were being built.
Well, I've been doing this political interest thing anyway before I became a candidate and an economics student for decades, since I was a teenager or even before to some extent. And Goldwater when I was 7 years old. And Goldwater had some nice things to say that anticipated our problems. But again, what happened? We got ran over by a complicit, monopolistic, government-controlled media. Those ideals were crushed. Yet, what happened? The 70s, which were ugly up here, ugly. We went through a worse time then in the 69, 70, 71 period, where unemployment up here was 22, 23%. Then we went into a stagflation. And then we went into spiking interest rates right at the start of the 80s. People remember that in their soul, if not maybe in their memories. And it's starting to shake out kind of similarly here now. People are scared. There's good people, really quality people, who have worked all their lives, unable to find a job, unable to really look forward to a future. And that's a crusher on the human spirit. And where does that come from? We're running in quicksand. That's what this economy and that's what each individual in this economy is doing. And we are encouraging people to not work. And if you do that, you kill their initiative, you kill their spirit, And ultimately, you cause a general deterioration in the strength of the country because you have to have principles. You have to have energy. You have to have drive. You have to have dreams. You have to have a future in order to be a great country. Otherwise, you're Italy.
That's well put. Listen, Doug, when is Election Day?
Well, we have a primary the third Tuesday of August, which is an early primary when you think about it. We have all mail-in ballots in most of the state or most of the district, and therefore they go out at the end of July. So we're coming up on it. So we need any and all help your listeners can give us in the form of contributions, word of mouth. Let's get the excitement going. I mean, it really is up to the candidates now. We have to lead this country. We really do, but we can't do it by ourselves. We're up there taking the abuse and taking the applause, which there's a lot more of it now on these issues and our solutions to those issues than ever before. But again, we can't let it go wrong.
Well, it would be a mistake to end the conversation here without spending at least a minute letting you comment about a major economic engine in your neck of the woods, and that's Boeing Company. What's going on?
Well, Boeing is hamstrung by the government. We have a company that is running in quicksand up here. They do a great job. They have wonderful people. Their workforce is very highly organized and very highly trained and very necessary for our country. But again, we should have twice the footprint of Boeing in this area that we do. They're afraid to hire people. They have a backlog. They had a backlog all through the boom. What are they doing? They can't push the planes out fast enough because they can't hire people because they're afraid to, because of the costs that are incurred by the government and the way they restrict their ability to compete.
Congressional candidate Doug Cloud. The web address is DougCloud, just like it sounds, DougCloud, DougCloud.com, 6th Congressional District in Washington State, the Tacoma area. Doug, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Charles.
And thanks to Freedom's Phoenix, freedomsphoenix.com, for the use of their studios for these conversations.
Candidate, and that's what I'm trying to do.